The roar of the motorcycle engine echoed through the quiet streets of Beverly Hills as Keanu pulled up to the curb. He switched off the bike and sat there for a moment, running his fingers through his long, tangled hair. 3 weeks of filming had left him looking like he'd been through a windstorm. His beard was uneven, his leather jacket was worn and dusty, and his jeans had seen better days. He glanced at his reflection in the bike's mirror and winced. The movie production had wrapped up late the night before, and he was finally free to take care of himself again. A proper haircut seemed like the perfect way to start feeling human again. The salon in front of him looked like something out of a magazine. Glass windows stretched from floor to ceiling, giving him a clear view of the pristine white interior. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow reflections across marble floors so polished they looked like mirrors. The name, Platinum Touch, was written in elegant gold letters across the entrance. Keanu had driven past this place countless times but never really paid attention to it. Today, it just happened to be the closest salon to where he'd finished his morning coffee. He figured a haircut was a haircut, right? The moment he pushed through the heavy glass doors, he knew he might have made a mistake. The air inside smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Soft classical music played in the background, and everything seemed to sparkle under the bright lights. His motorcycle boots made squeaking sounds on the marble floor, breaking the peaceful silence. Behind a curved white desk sat a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and makeup that looked like it took hours to apply. She was scrolling through her phone, her long fingernails making tiny clicking sounds on the screen. When she heard his footsteps, she looked up with a bright smile that instantly faded when she saw him. Her eyes traveled from his messy hair down to his dusty boots and back up again. The smile didn't return. Instead, she gave him the kind of look people usually reserved for uninvited guests at fancy parties. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but cold. She set her phone down, but kept her finger hovering over it, like she might need to call security at any moment. "Hi there," Keanu said, giving her his usual friendly smile. "I was hoping to get a haircut today. Do you have any openings?" The woman blinked slowly, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. She glanced around the salon, where several other staff members had stopped what they were doing to watch the interaction. A few clients in plush white robes turned to look as well, their conversations dropping to whispers. "A haircut," she repeated, like he'd asked for something completely unreasonable. "Sir, this is Platinum Touch. We're a luxury establishment." Keanu nodded, still smiling. "That's great, I just need a trim, nothing fancy." The receptionist exchanged a look with a nearby stylist, who was pretending to organize bottles of expensive-looking hair products. The stylist raised her eyebrows and gave a small shake of her head. "Well," the receptionist continued, her tone getting even chillier, "our next available appointment is in about 3 months, and our services start at $500. She said the price like it was meant to scare him away. Around the salon, he could hear the whispers getting louder. Someone behind him made a small snorting sound like they were trying not to laugh. "500 sounds fine," Keanu said simply. "And I don't mind waiting if someone has a cancellation today." This seemed to catch the receptionist off guard. She fumbled with her appointment book, flipping through pages with unnecessary force. Her perfectly manicured fingers drummed on the desk as she pretended to study the schedule. "I'm sorry, but we really don't have anything available," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "And honestly, our clients expect a certain atmosphere here." She gestured vaguely at his appearance, making it clear what she meant without saying it directly. Keanu felt his cheeks warm up, but he kept his expression neutral. He'd been in enough awkward situations in his life to know that getting defensive would only make things worse. "I understand," he said quietly. "Maybe I could just wait and see if anything opens up?" Before the receptionist could answer, heels clicked sharply across the marble floor. A tall woman in an expensive-looking black dress approached the desk. Her dark hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, and she wore the kind of jewelry that probably cost more than most people's cars. Everything about her screamed authority and money. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice carrying clearly across the salon. She looked at Keanu like he was a stain on her perfect white floor. The receptionist quickly explained the situation, speaking in hushed tones but making sure her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. The woman in black listened with increasing disapproval, her lips getting thinner with each word. "I see," she said when the receptionist finished. She turned to face Keanu directly, looking him up and down with undisguised distaste. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Platinum Touch caters to a very specific clientele. We have certain standards to maintain." The way she said standards made it clear that Keanu didn't meet them. Around the salon, conversations had completely stopped. Everyone was watching now, some trying to be subtle about it, others staring openly. "Our clients pay premium prices for an exclusive experience," the woman continued. "I'm sure you can understand why we need to be selective about who we serve." Keanu felt the embarrassment creeping up his neck. He'd faced down movie critics, demanding directors, and crowds of thousands, but somehow this felt worse. These people were judging him based on nothing more than how he looked after a long day of work. "There's a perfectly good salon about 10 minutes down the road," the woman added, her tone suggesting this was a generous offer. "I'm sure they'd be happy to accommodate you." She pointed toward the door like she was giving him directions to leave. The message was crystal clear. He wasn't welcome here, and the sooner he left, the better. Keanu stood there for a moment, feeling all those eyes on him. Part of him wanted to explain who he was, to see the looks on their faces when they realized their mistake. But a bigger part of him just felt tired and disappointed. Not in himself, but in how quickly people could judge someone they didn't know. "Right," he said softly, nodding toward the woman. "Thanks for the suggestion." He turned toward the door, his footsteps echoing loudly in the suddenly quiet salon. Behind him, he could hear the whispers starting up again, mixed with what sounded like satisfied chuckles. Someone's phone camera clicked, probably taking a picture to share with friends later about the strange man who thought he belonged in a place like this. As he reached for the door handle, Keanu caught his reflection in the glass. Maybe they were right. Maybe he did look out of place among all this luxury and perfection. But that didn't make the sting of rejection hurt any less. Keanu's hand was inches from the door handle when he heard the woman's voice behind him get sharper. "Excuse me?" She called out loud enough for the entire salon to hear. "I don't think we're finished here." He turned around slowly, hoping maybe she'd had a change of heart. Instead, he saw her walking toward him with determined steps, her expensive heels clicking like a countdown on the marble floor. Her face showed no warmth at all. "Before you leave," she said, stopping just a few feet away from him, "I think we need to clear something up. You mentioned you could pay our prices, but frankly, I find that hard to believe." The salon had gone completely silent now. Even the soft classical music seemed quieter somehow. Keanu could feel every pair of eyes in the place focused on this moment. A few people had their phones out, not even trying to hide the fact that they were recording. "I'd like to see some proof that you can actually afford our services," the woman continued, crossing her arms. "We've had people come in here before, waste our time, and then claim they left their wallet in the car or some other excuse." Keanu felt his face grow hot. In all his years of living in Los Angeles, dealing with all kinds of people, he'd never been asked to prove he had money before getting a simple haircut. The request felt like a slap across the face. "You want to see my credit card?" he asked quietly, genuinely confused by the whole situation. "That would be a start," she replied, her voice dripping with satisfaction. She was clearly enjoying this moment of power. "We can't have people wasting our time if they can't back up their claims." Behind her, the receptionist was nodding along, like this was perfectly normal behavior. Some of the other staff members had gathered closer, forming a small crowd around the confrontation. They looked like they were watching a show. Keanu reached into his jacket pocket, feeling around for his wallet. The simple action felt heavy and humiliating with so many people watching. As he pulled out a worn leather wallet, he heard someone behind him whisper something that sounded like, "This should be good." He opened the wallet and pulled out a black credit card, holding it up for the woman to see. She squinted at it, then took a step closer like she was examining evidence in a crime scene. She said, taking her time to study the card. "This could be anyone's card. How do I know it's really yours?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Keanu stared at her, trying to understand how this simple request for a haircut had turned into something so ugly. Around them, he could hear people shifting in their seats, phones clicking as pictures were taken. "You want to see my ID too?" he asked, his voice still calm but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "That would be helpful, yes," she said with a fake smile. "I'm sure you understand we have to be careful. We've had situations before where people try to use stolen cards." Now she was basically accusing him of being a thief. Keanu felt something twist in his stomach, a mix of anger and disbelief. But he pulled out his driver's license anyway, holding it next to the credit card. The woman made a big show of comparing the name on the card to the name on the license, taking much longer than necessary. She held both items close to her face, then at arm's length, like she was some kind of expert detective. "Well," she finally said, handing both items back to him with obvious reluctance, "I suppose these seem to match." The way she said it made it sound like she was disappointed that everything checked out, like she'd been hoping to catch him in some kind of scam. "But," she continued, raising her voice again, "that still doesn't change the fact that we simply don't have any openings today, or this week, or this month, really." She gestured around the salon as if to prove her point. "As you can see, we're very busy. Our clients book months in advance because they know the quality of service we provide." Keanu looked around the salon. There were maybe 6 people getting services and at least 4 empty chairs. It was hardly what anyone would call busy. But pointing that out would only make this situation more uncomfortable for everyone. "I understand you're booked," he said, putting his wallet back in his pocket. "But I thought maybe if someone canceled, last minute, or if there was a gap between appointments." "There won't be," the woman cut him off firmly. "And even if there was, we have a waiting list of regular clients who get priority." She paused, looking him up and down one more time. "Besides, I think you'd be more comfortable somewhere that's more suited to your style." The insult was clear, even though she tried to dress it up in polite language. She was telling him he didn't belong here, that people like him should stick to places more appropriate for their social level. One of the clients, an older woman with silver hair piled high on her head, spoke up from her chair. "Honestly, I come here to relax. I shouldn't have to deal with this kind of disruption." Her comment sparked murmurs of agreement from other clients. Someone said something about standards and atmosphere. Another person mentioned how they paid good money to avoid exactly this kind of situation. Keanu felt like he was in some kind of bizarre movie scene, except this was real life, and these were real people treating him like he was less than human. The woman in charge seemed to grow more confident with each passing moment, feeding off the support from her clients. "You see," she said, gesturing toward the other customers, "our clients expect a certain environment when they come here. They're paying for peace and exclusivity, not to be made uncomfortable by people who clearly don't understand what this place is about." She moved closer to him, lowering her voice, but not enough that others couldn't hear. "I'm trying to be nice about this, but you're starting to make a scene. My clients are getting upset, and that's not acceptable." Keanu looked around at the faces staring at him. Some looked annoyed. Others seemed amused by the whole situation. A few appeared uncomfortable but didn't speak up. The phones were still out, still recording, capturing every moment of his humiliation. "I'm not trying to make a scene," he said quietly. "I just wanted a haircut." "Well, you're not going to get one here," the woman replied, her patience clearly exhausted. "So I think it would be best for everyone if you just left now." She pointed toward the door again, this time with more authority. "There's a strip mall about 10 minutes down the road. I'm sure one of those places would be happy to help you." The dismissal in her voice was complete. She'd made her decision, had the support of her clients, and saw no reason to continue the conversation. In her mind, this was over. Keanu stood there for a moment longer, feeling the weight of all those stares. Part of him wanted to say something to defend himself, to make them understand they were being cruel for no reason. But he could see it wouldn't matter. These people had already decided who he was based on how he looked. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to anyone else. Sometimes the most dignified thing you could do was walk away, even when it hurt. Keanu took one last look around the salon, his eyes moving from face to face. Some people were still holding their phones up, capturing what they probably thought was just another entitled person getting kicked out of a fancy place. Others had already turned back to their conversations, dismissing him as yesterday's entertainment. He turned toward the door, his hand reaching for the handle once again. The weight of the embarrassment sat heavy on his shoulders, but he'd learned long ago that sometimes the best response to cruelty was simply to walk away with dignity intact. That's when he heard it, a sharp intake of breath from somewhere behind him, followed by the sound of metal tools clattering to the floor. The noise was loud enough to cut through all the whispered conversations and smugness that filled the air. "Oh my God," came a voice from the back corner of the salon. It was quiet at first, almost like someone talking to themselves. "Oh my God, no way." Keanu paused, his hand still on the door handle. The salon's background noise seemed to shift somehow, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. He could feel the energy in the room change, though he couldn't understand why. A young woman emerged from behind one of the styling stations in the back. She had been working quietly the whole time, mixing hair colors and organizing supplies while the drama unfolded near the front desk. She was probably in her early 20s with short purple streaks in her dark hair and the kind of wide-eyed expression that comes with sudden realization. "That's," she started to say, then stopped, shaking her head like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She took a few steps forward, squinting at Keanu's profile. "No, it can't be." The woman in charge of the salon turned toward her employee with obvious irritation. "What are you doing? Get back to your station. We have actual clients to take care of." But the young stylist wasn't listening. She was staring at Keanu with the kind of focus people usually reserved for solving impossible puzzles. Her mouth was slightly open, and she kept blinking like she was trying to clear her vision. "I was watching movies all night," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "The whole trilogy. I just finished the last one this morning before work." Several people in the salon turned to look at her, confused by her sudden outburst. The woman in charge looked like she was about to say something sharp, but the young stylist kept talking. "The long hair, the face shape, even the way he stands," she continued, her voice getting stronger with each word. "I can't believe I didn't see it before." Keanu felt a familiar sinking feeling in his stomach. He'd been recognized in public countless times before, usually in much better circumstances than this. He knew what was coming next, and given how this day had already gone, he wasn't sure it would make things better. The young woman took another step forward, her eyes never leaving his face. "You're him, aren't you? You're Keanu Reeves." The name hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. For a moment, nobody moved. The classical music kept playing softly in the background, but everything else seemed frozen in time. Then the whispers started. "Did she just say Keanu Reeves? No. Wait, that can't be right. Wait, let me look again. Hold on, she might be onto something." The woman in charge of the salon blinked several times like she was processing information her brain didn't want to accept. The confident, dismissive expression she'd worn for the past 20 minutes began to crack around the edges. "That's ridiculous," she said, but her voice sounded less certain than before. "That's not... He doesn't look like..." But even as she spoke, other people in the salon were starting to pull out their phones for a different reason now. Instead of recording what they thought was some random troublemaker, they were Googling images, comparing what they saw on their screens to the man standing by the door. "Oh no," someone whispered from one of the styling chairs. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." A client who had been getting highlights frantically scrolled through her phone, her face growing paler with each swipe. "I think I just posted a video," she said in horror. "I posted it on my story with the caption, 'Crazy person trying to get into Platinum Touch.'" The young stylist who had first recognized him was still staring, but now she looked sick to her stomach. "Mr. Reeves," she said quietly, "I am so sorry. I should have said something earlier. I should have stopped this." Keanu turned around slowly, his hand dropping from the door handle. The entire salon was looking at him now, but the expressions on their faces had completely changed. "Where There had been smugness and amusement before. Now there was shock, disbelief, and the first hints of panic. The woman in charge stood frozen behind the front desk, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to speak but couldn't find any words. The color had drained from her face, making her expensive makeup look garish under the bright lights. "This isn't happening," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening, and everyone in the salon could see it now. Without the bias of their first impressions, without the assumption that someone who looked like Keanu couldn't possibly be famous, the resemblance was obvious. The distinctive cheekbones, the gentle eyes, the way he carried himself with quiet grace even in the face of humiliation. A man getting a shave in the back corner started laughing, but not the good kind of laughter. It was the bitter sound someone makes when they realize they've made a terrible mistake. "I can't believe this," he said. "I actually filmed myself laughing at Keanu Reeves." More phones came out, but now people were frantically deleting videos instead of recording new ones. The sound of fingers tapping screens filled the salon as people tried to undo what they'd already done. "How did we not see it?" someone asked. "I mean, it's so obvious now." The receptionist at the front desk looked like she might be sick. She kept staring at her appointment book like it might offer some solution to what was happening. Her perfectly manicured hands were shaking as she flipped through the pages. The young stylist who had recognized him first was the only one who seemed to remember they were dealing with an actual human being instead of just a celebrity. "Mr. Reeves," she said again, taking a step toward him. "What they did to you was wrong. Famous or not, nobody should be treated like that." Keanu looked around the salon one more time, taking in all the shocked faces and panicked expressions. He could see people's minds racing, trying to figure out how to fix the situation, how to undo the damage they'd done. But the damage was already done. They'd shown him exactly who they were when they thought he was just another person they could dismiss. The fact that they were sorry now didn't change what had happened. It just meant they were sorry they'd been caught treating someone badly. The woman in charge finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Mr. Reeves, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Keanu almost smiled at that. A misunderstanding. As if the problem was some kind of communication error instead of the ugly truth about how these people treated anyone they thought was beneath them. The woman in charge took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and suddenly transformed into an entirely different person. The cold, dismissive tone vanished, replaced by what she probably thought was charm but came across as desperation. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice now dripping with fake sweetness as she hurried around the front desk. "There's been such a terrible misunderstanding here today. I had no idea who you were." She practically jogged across the marble floor in her high heels, the clicking sound echoing through the silent salon like gunshots. Everyone watched her approach Keanu with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for car crashes. Please don't leave," she continued, reaching out like she might actually grab his arm before thinking better of it. "I'm absolutely mortified by what happened. We would be honored to serve you today." Keanu stood perfectly still, his expression unreadable as she launched into what was clearly a panic-driven speech. Behind her, the rest of the salon staff had sprung into action like someone had hit an emergency button. The receptionist abandoned her post and started frantically clearing off the most expensive styling chair in the place. She grabbed bottles of premium products from other stations, arranging them like offerings around the chair. Her movements were so rushed and clumsy that she knocked over a small plant, sending dirt scattering across the white floor. "We have our best chair available right now," the manager said, gesturing wildly toward the chaos behind her. "Top-of-the-line equipment, the finest products money can buy. And of course, there would be absolutely no charge for any services today." Two other stylists had joined the frantic preparation, arguing in whispers about who would have the honor of cutting a movie star's hair. One of them ran to the back room and returned with a bottle of champagne and crystal glasses, setting them up on a side table with shaking hands. "Would you like some champagne?" the manager asked, her smile so wide it looked painful. "We have excellent wine, imported water, gourmet snacks, whatever you need to make this experience perfect for you." Keanu watched all this activity with the same calm expression he'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. If he was amused by their sudden change in behavior, he didn't show it. If he was angry, that didn't show either. The clients in the salon were having their own meltdowns. The woman who had complained about disruption to her relaxing experience was now trying to get the stylist's attention while frantically deleting videos from her phone. "Can you please not mention this to anyone?" She whispered urgently to her stylist. "I said some things earlier that I really shouldn't have said." Near the back, a man was having an animated conversation with someone on his phone. "No, delete the post," he was saying. "Delete it right now. I don't care if it already has likes, just get rid of it." Another client had abandoned her half-finished manicure and was pacing near the windows, talking rapidly to what sounded like a publicist or lawyer. "What do you mean it might already be too late? Can't we just explain that we didn't know?" The manager was still talking to Keanu, her voice getting higher and more desperate with each word. "I want you to know that this is not how we normally operate. We pride ourselves on treating every client with respect and dignity. What happened earlier was completely out of character for us." She paused, maybe expecting him to say something, but Keanu remained silent. This seemed to make her even more nervous. "I think there was some confusion with my staff," she continued, throwing quick glances at the receptionist, who was now so pale she looked like she might faint. "They're new, still learning our procedures. I personally would never have treated you that way if I had been handling your visit from the beginning." It was a lie, and everyone in the salon knew it. She had been the one to demand proof that he could pay. She had been the one to suggest he go to the strip mall salon. She had been the one to accuse him of making her clients uncomfortable. The young stylist who had first recognized him was standing off to the side, watching the whole scene with disgust. She kept shaking her head and muttering things under her breath that nobody else could hear. "We could offer you our premium treatment package," the manager went on, her voice getting more frantic as Keanu continued to remain silent. "Full cut and style, deep conditioning treatment, scalp massage, beard trim, the works. And we could schedule you for regular appointments going forward, of course." She was offering everything she could think of, trying to find something that would make him stay, something that would fix the damage that had been done. But with each passing second of silence from Keanu, she seemed to realize how hopeless her situation was becoming. "Maybe we could discuss this privately," she suggested, gesturing toward her office in the back. "I'm sure we can work something out that would be satisfactory for everyone involved." One of the other stylists approached cautiously, carrying a thick folder. "These are before and after photos of our work," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've done hair for lots of celebrities. We're really very good at what we do." The folder was filled with glossy photos of perfectly styled hair on perfectly made-up faces. The kind of portfolio that probably cost thousands of dollars to put together, all meant to impress potential high-end clients. "We understand discretion," another staff member chimed in from across the room. "We sign confidentiality agreements. What happens here stays here. Always." They were throwing everything they could think of at him, trying to find some way to convince him that they were worthy of his business, that they could be trusted despite what had just happened. The manager pulled out her phone and started scrolling, frantically. "I could call our owner right now," she said. "I'm sure he would want to personally apologize for this situation, maybe offer you a complimentary package for you and your friends." But even as she spoke, her voice was losing some of its forced confidence. She was starting to realize that all the free services and champagne in the world wouldn't undo the humiliation they had put him through. Around the salon, people were still dealing with their own panic. Someone was crying quietly in the corner, apparently overwhelmed by the thought of what she had posted online. Another client had given up trying to delete her social media posts and was just sitting with her head in her hands. The receptionist finally spoke up, her voice shaky and desperate. "Mr. Reeves, I want you to know that I feel terrible about how I treated you. I was having a bad day, and I took it out on you, and that was completely wrong." It was the first apology that sounded somewhat genuine, even though it came with an excuse attached to it. But like all the others, it felt too little, too late. The manager shot her a look that could have frozen water, clearly angry that someone else was trying to control the narrative. This was her disaster to manage, her business to save. "What my employee means," she said quickly, is that we all feel terrible about this misunderstanding. We want to make it right. Just tell us what we can do to earn your forgiveness." She stood there, waiting for an answer, surrounded by her panicking staff and mortified clients. The salon that had seemed so elegant and exclusive just an hour earlier now felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Keanu stood there for what felt like forever, looking around at all the desperate faces staring back at him. The silence stretched on until even the classical music seemed too loud. Everyone was waiting for him to speak, to tell them what they could do to fix this mess they had created. Finally, he smiled. Not the fake kind of smile the manager had been giving him, but the genuine, gentle smile that had made him beloved by millions of people around the world. It was the same smile he'd tried to give them when he first walked in, before they decided he wasn't worth their time. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice cutting through all the tension in the room. "But I think I'll take your original suggestion." The manager blinked, confusion replacing the desperate hope that had been written across her face. "My original suggestion? The place down the street," Keanu said, nodding toward the window. "You mentioned there was a salon about 10 minutes away. That sounds perfect." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Several people actually stepped backward, as if they'd been pushed. The manager's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Mr. Reeves, please," she finally managed to say. "Don't let this one mistake ruin what could be a great relationship. We really are the best salon in Beverly Hills." But Keanu was already turning back toward the door. "I'm sure you are," he said over his shoulder, "for the right kind of people." The phrase hung in the air, a gentle but pointed reminder of exactly what they had said to him just minutes earlier. They had made it clear that he wasn't the right kind of people, and now he was simply agreeing with their assessment. "Wait," called out the young stylist who had first recognized him. She stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Mr. Reeves, before you go, I want you to know that not everyone here agrees with how you were treated." She turned to look at her co-workers, her voice getting stronger. "What happened here today was disgusting. You all judged someone based on how they looked, and then the second you found out he was famous, you completely changed how you acted." The manager shot her a warning look, but the young woman ignored it completely. "That's not who I want to be, and it's not the kind of place I want to work." She untied her apron and dropped it on the floor, the black fabric stark against the white marble. "I quit." The sound of the apron hitting the ground seemed unnaturally loud in the silent salon. Everyone stared at her in shock, including Keanu, who had stopped walking toward the door. "You can't quit," the manager said, her voice cracking slightly. "You're under contract. You have clients booked for the rest of the week." "Watch me," the young stylist replied. She grabbed her purse from behind her station and walked toward the door where Keanu was standing. "Some things are more important than contracts." As she passed him, she paused. "I'm really sorry about what happened to you today. You deserved so much better than this." Keanu nodded at her, his expression showing genuine appreciation for her gesture. "Thank you. That means a lot." She pushed through the glass doors and walked out into the bright California sunshine, leaving behind a salon full of people who were just beginning to understand the real consequences of their actions. The manager turned back to Keanu, desperation clear in her voice. "Mr. Reeves, please don't let one person's dramatic exit influence your decision. We can still make this right." But Keanu had already reached for the door handle again. "I think your employee said it perfectly," he told her. "Some things are more important than getting what you want." He paused in the doorway, looking back one last time at the faces staring at him. "You know what the sad part is? I wasn't looking for special treatment. I just wanted a haircut and maybe to be treated like a human being. That's all anyone really wants." The truth of his words settled over the salon like a heavy blanket. Every person in that room knew exactly what kind of person they had revealed themselves to be when they thought it didn't matter. "When you decided I wasn't worth your time," Keanu continued, "you showed me who you really are. The fact that you're sorry now doesn't change that. It just means you're sorry you got caught." With that, he stepped outside, leaving the glass doors to swing shut behind him. Through the windows, Everyone could see him walking toward his motorcycle, his movements calm and unhurried despite everything that had happened. Inside the salon, chaos erupted. The manager was already on her phone, probably trying to call the owner to explain the disaster that had just unfolded. Several clients were demanding to speak to supervisors, threatening to never come back and to tell all their friends about what they had witnessed. "This is going to be all over the internet in an hour," one woman said, her voice shaking. "We all recorded videos. Some people probably already posted them." She was right. Within minutes of Keanu leaving, the first posts started appearing on social media. Videos of him being humiliated, photos of the uncomfortable confrontation, and detailed descriptions of everything that had happened began spreading across the internet like wildfire. But something unexpected started happening in the comments. Instead of people laughing at Keanu or supporting the salon's actions, the response was overwhelmingly negative toward Platinum Touch. People were outraged by how he had been treated, sharing their own stories of discrimination and poor treatment. At high-end establishments, the salon's phone started ringing constantly, but not with people wanting to book appointments. Angry callers demanded explanations, canceled existing appointments, and left scathing reviews online. The perfect 5-star rating the salon had maintained for years began plummeting as people expressed their disgust with what they had seen. Meanwhile, Keanu had made his way to the small salon down the street, just as the manager had suggested. It was nothing fancy. A few basic chairs, some outdated magazines, and fluorescent lighting that had seen better days. But when he walked in, the elderly owner looked up with a genuine smile and said, "How can I help you today?" No judgment about his appearance. No demands to see his credit card. No suggestions that he might be more comfortable somewhere else. Just a simple human question from one person to another. "I'd like a haircut, if you have time," Keanu said. "Of course," the owner replied, gesturing toward an empty chair. "Make yourself comfortable. Can I get you some coffee while we work?" As Keanu settled into the worn but comfortable chair, he could see the fancy salon down the street through the window. Even from this distance, he could tell something was wrong. People were standing around in groups, gesturing frantically, and several clients appeared to be leaving. The old barber followed his gaze and chuckled. "Fancy place, that one. But sometimes the most expensive isn't the best, you know. Sometimes, you just need someone who remembers that we're all just people trying to get through the day." Keanu smiled, finally relaxing for the first time since this whole ordeal began. Couldn't agree more. Back at Platinum Touch, the manager was discovering that some mistakes can't be fixed with apologies and free champagne. Some lessons only come from watching everything you thought you cared about fall apart piece by piece.